We had a charming little lunch at a squalid bucolic shack next to a rubbish dump where they served brains, leeches and other bits of meat which defied categorisation as to species or part. For once I stuck to the vegetarian option and had some rather interesting soup the colour of washing up water with a single slice of carrot floating in it. It was followed by an omelette which had the consistency of industrial rubber floor covering, which I threw up some minutes later as we approached two royal pagodas. The trip was marred by an irritating Swiss woman and her mother, who seemed to be on a 15-year global backpacking epic covering every single country from Antarctica to Zambia. As admirable as this sounds, these people could bore a whole country into submission within 5 minutes in any of about 17 languages. I decided in 2006, the end of 2006, to get away from the horrible British winters and all the other absurd things that go on in the UK. And go to Thailand for 3 months. I'd been there 37 years before and I thought, well, why not go back after all this time? And decided to go for 3 months so I could really kind of get under the skin of a place. I never think you can really find out about a place in a couple of weeks because your initial impressions are usually wrong. So I stayed in this, on the 8th floor of this tower block in Chiangmai, which is the northern capital. This book was based on the emails and various other letters that I wrote to people back in the UK. I think after time you realise that all societies are completely flawed, and what you see in Thailand if you go there for 2 weeks is you see friendly smiling people, you see wonderful tourist attractions, nice food. If you're a middle-aged man who wants sex, then it's there and it's available. But when you get underneath the skin of the place, you realise that there's a very dark side to the Thai soul. They are very cruel people. They are also very greedy in their own way. Thai women, for example, are just notorious throughout Southeast Asia for being able to take Western men for a ride. And they certainly put their Vietnamese and Cambodian and Filipino counterparts to shame when it comes to ripping men off. In the restaurant he is one of the ugliest men I've ever seen. He has flesh tones which resemble the slopes of Vesuvius after a recent eruption. He's about 70, at least 22 stone, and with a paunch the size of one of Jupiter's moons. He's got a patch over one eye and one of those orthopedic collars swathed in a towel which at some time in its existence may well have been grey. He speaks in single-syllable Neanderthal grunts, which after closer inspection turns out to be some arcane perversion of English, probably Australian. He makes even the most miserable people I know, and believe me, there are plenty of them, look like the world's most upbeat and ultra-positive optimists. In other words, he's not a terribly attractive example of one of God's creations. Sitting next to him is a stunning, and I mean stunning, Thai girl who's no more than 18. The poor creature's having to sit there with the obligatory smile while our outback ape man hands out a 1,000 baht note. That's approximately £14.37 at today's generous exchange rate. And he communicates his requirements in muffled tones. He then pats her pert bum with his gigantic warty hand and dispatches the teenager for a packet of fags. Great shaggy wheezes to the equally proportioned American with a ponytail and facial piercings next to him as soon as she's left the building. I too depart from the building shortly afterwards and regurgitate my bacon and eggs on a bit of waste ground down the nearest soy. I lived in basically a studio flat. It was quite a big flat, just one big huge room with a bed and table and bathroom and little kitchen. And what I liked about the fact was that I could fit all my possessions into one small bag. I had 2 or 3 changes of clothing, a woman at the bottom of the street who did my washing every 3 days. Life was very, very simple. I could walk out of this apartment block, get on my bike, go and have a fabulous meal for 25 pence, go and wander around in the sunshine, choke on the pollution. Fantastic. You know, it was just a simple way of life. There weren't all these letters coming through the door trying to extort money out of you for electricity and gas and council tax and all the other things you have to pay. Just a very, very simple lifestyle. It was almost living like a student or a monk or something like that, and I actually like that very much. And I'd very much like to go and do that somewhere else, so you can just literally chuck all your stuff in a bag, there you are, that's your life. It's journalism where you are the centre of the story, and to some extent, and all the journalism I've done over the years in radio, television, newspapers, magazines, internet, it's always a much more supposedly objective form of journalism. But as Hunter S. Thompson, the man who invented gonzo journalism, said, subjective journalism is a contradiction in terms. You are always part of the story, whether you like it or not. I think journalism is very dishonest, and I think it's become very degenerate and debasing in lots of ways. And then, of course, it also has a negative side as well. Slight spat at Mrs. Som's restaurant earlier on, where I seem to have inadvertently broken some unwritten rule of dining protocol. You see, she always serves me too much of her red, green or yellow curries. They arrive in something the size of a wash basin, and I never quite finish them. Of late, she's gone into the habit of telling me that I don't enjoy her food. Diplomatically, I always reply that her food's the most delicious in town, but only being a cricket bat-sized sort of person, the old appetite is limited, especially in a tropical climate. Anyway, tonight the portion was huge, and there were a few bits of unidentifiable flesh in the bottom of the dish, a small sliver of which I chucked to one of her vest-wearing dogs. It's green and white stripes and looks like it's never been washed. The vest, that is. Well, she didn't like that at all. Took great exception, in fact. Presumably the dogs normally get the real cack leftovers, and my throwing it one of her mouth-watering morsels proved insulting beyond description. First she scowled at me, then she wagged a herb-covered finger in my general direction, then she overcharged me and was even more insulted when I tried to make amends with a sort of tip I don't normally give. Sometimes you just can't win. Sometimes cultural divisions just get in the way, and no amount of communication can disentangle the mess.